everyone, Ray here with Rienks. Today's project, building and installing this metal gate to close off the stairway here. I tried purchasing a couple, and due to the width of this thing and the slope with the stairs here, and there's some pipes running through, we couldn't find anything that worked, so I built this. So if you're interested in seeing how I did it, stay tuned and I'll take you through the steps. One more thing, I filmed this with my phone. I filmed the whole thing in vertical mode because I wasn't thinking about doing a YouTube channel at the time, so sorry about that. But the information's still there, it just doesn't look as good on screen. So live and learn. Stay tuned and I'll show you how we did it. So, I've got a school in Walsenburg that needs a gate across a stairway. We purchased a couple that didn't work or worth beans, so I got this pile of metal here, and now we're going to build a gate. Show you how we're doing it. First thing we're going to do is just clean this mess up. I'm just going to use some acetone. Wipe these down because they are filthy. Okay, so we got all of our metal cleaned up, and we're going to start building the frame for this gate now. This is 1-inch tubing, square tubing, and the gate's going to be a rectangle shape. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the angles at a 45 degrees so that they'll butt together, and it'll be a little easier. I mean, you could cut them square and then cap the ends, but I think this will be a little bit easier. So what I've done, I've got this handy thing. It's a hunk of aluminum that a machinist friend of mine made me years ago. It's got a perfect 90-degree angle and a perfect 45-degree angle. I use this for all my tool setups: table saw, joiner, drill press, miter saws, and of course this is the chop saw. You could of course just cut this with a grinder or cutting wheel, but I have this, so we're going to use it. So I've actually already set this fence up to a 45-degree angle and locked it in place. So now we'll go ahead and make that cut, and then we'll do the same on the other pieces. So there's our first 45-degree cut, and we'll put one on the end of each rectangle piece, and then we'll mark them where we want them, and then we'll cut the other ends. So once those 45-degree angles are cut, you can see it leaves a mess around the edges, sharp of course, and so we're going to take that off now. So just a grinder and flap disc, take those edges off, make it nice and clean. Now that we got the corners cleaned up, what we need to do is mark the next cut. This is either going to be the top rail or the bottom rail. They're going to be the same length, and in our case they're going to be 55.5 inches long. So we'll mark that. our 45 at that mark. I can find it again. There it is. So we'll cut that, and then we'll do another piece just like it for the top and bottom. Okay, we got our 45-degree angles cut. This is gonna be the top and bottom. Right now I've got them lined up. You can see I've got them perfectly lined up right now in a vise. And then what I did is I found the center point, which is this line here. And now we're going to mark for the slats. So if you picture this piece here rolling up on top, and then there'll be slats in between, creating the fence or the gate. And so now what we're going to do is mark for the slats. Now for this age group of kids we're making this gate for, they need a maximum of a 4-inch gap between the slats. So we're going to go off our center point here, and we're using 7/16" rod for the slats. So I'm going to mark off, rather than just go exactly every 4 inches, I'm going to go 4 1/4 between the slats. So what I've done here off the center line, I went 2 and actually 1/8, and then we're going to go 2 and 1/8 this way, and that'll give us the 4 1/4 between the slats. The slats being 7/16 inch, that would come out to be 3 13/16, I think, in between the slats. So that would meet the 4-inch requirement. And make everything just super happy. So I'm going to show you, I'm just going to mark these real quick, and then we'll scribe lines. I'll show you what we're doing here. So we've got the center piece already done. So I'm going to go 4 1/4 off of each point now. And just put a dot at each 4 1/4 mark. So we have the dots we just made. Now we're going to just scribe right down the center across both pieces. That way everything lines up just right. So I'll show you what we're doing. So at every mark that we made, we're going to scribe a line just like I did here. And then we'll come back and get the center point of each piece, and then we'll drill holes out for the slats. Okay, we have our marks for the slats. Now what we're going to do is we're going to find the center lines for both so that we can drill holes in. Now, some of this might seem simplistic to some of you, but I do it because not everybody knows. So I learn a lot from watching other people, and that's what I did my whole life. I just watched other people do things, and then I sometimes figure out my own ways, and I sometimes use their ways. So hopefully it's not boring you. But basically what we're going to do here is this is 1-inch tubing, top and bottom of the rails. So I've set my square. If you can see, I've got that set right on the 7, basically 1 inch. So I'm going to put this here. Let me try to get this. Let's see if I can see it. Okay. So I'm going to use this like so. I'm going to put the scribe right at the 1/2 inch mark, and then I'm just going to pull this along and scribe across the center mark. So I'm going to see if I can't show you that, how I'm finding the center lines of all these spots. Okay, so I want to draw a center line on this one. I'll put my scribe. I'm on the left side, to my left, your right. I'm on the left side of the scribe line. I'm going to put the scribe right at the 1/2 inch mark, and I'm just going to push it and give myself a mark there. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the next one and the next one. Put it right at the 1/2 inch mark and push the square over, and that gives me a center mark. So you can see that center mark there. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. We'll just come back, we'll come back from this side and just do the same thing. So we're going to do that all the way down. Notice I marked these. This is left and right. And I also put a little witness line here because one of these pieces is going to flip over and be the top. And you want to keep everything lined up so that nothing ends up looking goofy. So we got all of our holes center punched. Now we're going to set up the drill press to drill our holes. Okay, so I got all the holes drilled in the upper and lower sections of the gate. There's the lower section. You can see the holes drilled. Now what I'm going to do is start welding the frame of the gate together. I'm using my square to keep those aligned while I tack it in place. Okay, so there you have it. Now put a couple on the other side on both ends and then flip it over. And start making the slats. All right, I'm going to make the slats out of this round bar. And that will fit in the holes that we drilled. I've only welded up, just tack welded, the one side. This piece is still free. Now I'm going to measure to see how long we want to cut the round bar pieces. So they can sit in here. They don't need to be tight in here, so they can float. So I'm going to measure from here to here, and then we'll cut the slats about a 1/2 inch shorter so they can float back and forth. Because what I'm going to do is get them sitting in there, just floating, and then tack weld these corners after we put all the slats in there floating, so that I can take the gate to the school and make sure I don't need to make any adjustments before we weld it all up. So that's why we're just tack welding everything right now. So let's measure for these slats real quick. So 3 feet, which is what we made this gate. I think if we go 35.5 inches, that'll give the slats enough room to just float back and forth between the two pieces. And then once we make sure that the frame is square and fits where it's going, then we'll weld everything up and then we'll figure out some sort of a hinge system. Okay, now I'm cutting the slats to 35.5 inches. So now we need 12 of those. We've cut 6 of them so far. So we're gonna keep going until we have all those cut. All right, so here's all the slats cut. And you can see when you cut them, it leaves a bunch of slag. They don't need to be perfect. They don't need to be perfect, just cleaned up a bit, because they're going to sit inside a hole, you're never going to see them, but you got to clean them up a bit. Other ways to do it, you could use flap discs, files, so you don't need the fancy tool that I'm using right now. You can do it other ways. Okay, we got all of our slats cut, and we cleaned up the edges, got all the burrs and everything off them. Now what we're going to do, we don't want all this scale on them, it's just surface rust, but we're going to take that surface rust off of these so that so it doesn't start rusting through the paint. And the way I'm going to do it is we're going to just chuck this up in the drill press. We're going to get it spinning, and we're just going to take some sandpaper. This is just 120 grit, and we're just going to run this up as this thing's spinning and clean it up. Whoops. This doesn't need to be perfect. We're just getting all the scale and junk off of it. So you can see now it's looking pretty clean. So we'll hit all those like that real quick, and then we'll start putting this thing together. Okay, here we are. I know I got a lot of junk behind this video, so probably a little bit hard to see, but basically we've got the 3 sides of the gate. I set the slats in the holes on the bottom, and now we're going to try to fit the top. And honestly, it's probably going to be a bitch because I've got to get all of these, which are right now just moving around in there, lined up to go into each hole. So it's probably going to be a little bit difficult. Okay, I did manage to get the bottom or top rail on, however you want to look at it. Doesn't really matter because this is a perfect rectangle, or it's supposed to be. Okay, we are tacked in. Okay, that's tacked in. We'll tack in that other corner now, and then we'll go and try it at the school. clean these welds up now, which look atrocious. Inside corner, I can't get my regular sanders in there, so using this die grinder, make quick work of it. Now the hinges is what we have to figure out. So I took this to the site where it's going to be mounted and marked this is the top of the gate. And I marked locations for the hinges where that tape is. And no, it's not even, but think of what we got going on. We're putting this on the bottom of a stairwell. So we're putting on the last step. So the stairway comes down like this. So we have an area that comes down like this that we have to attach hinges to. It's concrete building or concrete and brick walls. So my thought is, I went and picked up a couple of these bushings. I don't know what they're for. They were for something specific for a tractor or something. I got in my Big R. And I bought a couple of hinge pins or hitch pins. I already cleaned this one up, took this part off of it. But this bushing will go right over it and rotate on it. So the thought is to take this bushing, weld it on here like so, and then the hinge pin will sit on something mounted to the wall, and the gate will slide up over it, and then be able to pivot that way. Now notice this here is going to push this out from the gate a little bit. And I'm going to put the bushing back on it. So I can't weld that bushing directly to the gate because this piece here sits prouder. So what I'm going to do is, I've got some scrap flat bar. I think it's 1/8, maybe 3/16. I'll weld this to this to create a gap here to make up for this gap here, if that makes sense. You'll see it all come together. So we'll cut this, two pieces. We got doubles of everything. I'll cut it. I'll cut this to the width of the gate or close to it. That'll space this off. We'll weld all this together, and then we'll start making the mount that goes to the wall. So hopefully that all makes sense, and we'll do a little bit of work here and then we'll come back and talk about it. So I'm just going to do a 1-inch cut. I'm going to make 2 of these pieces. Someday I'm going to get myself a stand. Okay, so from here to the inside of this line is 1 inch. So I'll cut this off and then I'll make another one just like it, and we'll come back. sander. All right, time to start making the hinges. This is the piece that we made to space the bushing off of the gate. So this bushing here will get welded on here. By the way, the dog you hear barking, not my dogs. I wouldn't let my dogs bark constantly like this, so I got a little bit of a neighbor war going on, but anyway, that's a topic for another time. So this bushing now is going to get welded to the spacer, and we just have to make sure that we have because we have this lip here that this thing's going to ride on. The whole reason we're making the spacer is to make room for this lip here. So when we weld this on, we'll have it back a bit so that this doesn't bind with the spacer. So I'm going to clamp this in place, just this part, on here with some vice grips, and then tack weld it up. I'm just getting it centered on the spacer. I've got a little bit of overhang here. Now we'll tack it. I'm not going to make you watch the whole process, but you can see we're starting to feather it in. So I'll continue that on and then I'll show you when I'm done. Okay, I'm getting ready to install the receivers for the hinge pins. And I have these marked out sort of where they need to go. These don't have to be perfect, but and then so these are 5/8 holes and a 5/8 pin, and so this will end up somehow getting mounted somewhere, but we're going to install these now. What I realize is I can't just weld these on because when this part, whenever I figure out how I'm going to make the part that the gate's going to sit on, I need to have a really good alignment, or else it's going to be a nightmare to put the gate on. The gate's just going to sit on those pins. So what I did is I have a piece of 5/8 round bar. I'm going to run it through these now, and I'm going to weld it on with the, I'm going to weld the hinge receivers on with this in place to keep everything aligned, if that makes sense. So now you can see we're in alignment. So now I'm going to go ahead and weld those on, and then we'll have good alignment when it's done. Okay, we'll clean up these welds now. Okay, so I got the bushings for the hinges welded on the gate now. I think I've got this figured out what I'm going to do now. So I've got this 1/4 inch flat bar. I'm going to cut a couple pieces off it now. 2 pieces the same size. I measured where I have to put this gate, and I need 1.5 inch spacing off the wall to the center of this pin. So what I'm going to do is take this whole piece here, not the whole thing, we'll have to measure it to see how long it needs to be, but this piece is going to go down the length of the wall, and then there'll be a couple pieces sticking off like that that will hold the hinge pins like so. Okay, we got our 2 pieces now. We'll clean up these edges and then mark the holes, drill for the pins. Okay, we got our 2 pieces that we cut to accept the pins. I spaced off what I needed from my measurements that I took earlier off the wall, and then found the center this way. Center punched both holes. Now I'm going to drill them. I just picked a random smaller bit to drill through, and then we'll use a step bit to take them out to 5/8 of an inch so that this pin can sit down into it like that. Okay, I went to the site today to start planning for how we're going to mount this thing to the wall and for the hinges. So here's our hinges, or receivers, whatever, but these will sit on here and the whole gate will swing on this. I made a template. If you picture the wall, this is coming down a staircase. This gate's going to go at the bottom of the staircase. So the stairs are coming down this way, and then there's a railing up here at the top, not a railing, but windowsill. So we need to make an angle on the bottom. So I made a template just out of paper. I have a straight edge on this side and a straight edge here. So I'm just going to line this up here and then cut this like so. So that'll mount against the wall. Okay, here's what I'm doing. I'm just cutting this off with the cutting wheel. This is what it kind of looked like before. The pin will end up sitting in here like so. Okay, last section we made these pieces here so that the gate can swivel on them. What I didn't account for or even think about at all was that. That's as far as the gate would be able to open. Luckily, the gate only can go one way. It won't be able to swing both ways. So that ain't gonna work. So instead of that, I made this out of that. Now the gate can swing that far, which is plenty. Got our hinge pieces cut. It'll allow for full gate swing now. And then this piece will come, this is going to be the piece that's going to mount to the wall. I'll get welded on those, and that's how it'll work. Right now, I'm going to cut these pins a little shorter. They don't need to be that long. And I'll drill a hole through them so that I can pin them so that the gate can't be lifted off. Clean this up now, give the end a little bit of a taper using grinding wheel, and then clean it up with the belt sander. Not perfect, but I might give it a little bit more taper. And then I'm going to drill a hole through it to accept a pin. This pin is actually fairly soft metal, so it's drilling through pretty easily. All right, I'm getting ready to mount the hinge bracket on. This was made out of a piece that was exactly this thick. So I've used a C-clamp to center it this way. Now I'm going to take it off, using a strong magnet to keep it vertically level. And I use a square to keep it square this way. All this is important because if these hinge pins don't line up, like this one down here, if this one's a little bit crooked this way or this way, or this way or this way, then those hinges aren't going to line up. So now I'm going to tack weld this one in place. Okay, I'm going to weld the pin in now. I'm just going to tack it on the back side here, a couple tacks. Okay, I got this clamped together to weld it up. If you remember, I finished tacking this on, and then I tacked the pin onto the bracket, and I set the thing in place, and I was going to just mark this so that I could tack this on, but then I realized, it actually clamps in place really nicely, so it makes way more sense to weld it on in place like that, so that hopefully the whole piece will just come off, be perfectly aligned, and no problem. So I'm going to go ahead and tack these now, and then I'll have to change the wire in my welder and weld these up properly, because it's got it set up for MIG right now, and that's not enough to weld this 1/4 inch steel. So I'm going to tack it and then weld it all up. So I got it tacked on, and it actually works really nice. Look at that. So I'll finish welding it up. I just thought I'd show you real quick. I do see one issue. If you look at this one, the amount of space I have here is perfect. This one's a bit tight. It's not rubbing or anything, but I will go ahead and take a little bit more off that round edge there, just so it looks a little better. And also, the thing does slide right out, so everything is lined up. So when I weld this, I'm going to be careful about not getting too much heat into it because it's lined up perfectly. I don't want anything to move. Okay, got the hinge plate just about done. That's all sturdied up. The gate, of course, will slide down over these. See this angle here? Again, this is the bottom of the stairwell, so the stairs come down like this. So due to the weight of the gate, I don't feel comfortable just mounting this to the wall the way it is because the gate is so heavy. So I'm going to add a couple pieces on here. I got this piece that I made here. That'll go there. And then I'm making another one just like it. That'll go down here. Actually, this way. And follow the stairs down, which you'll see when we go to mount it. And then I'm going to make another piece, or a couple more pieces. One that'll come off here. Sorry about the crazy camera. So that we can drill a hole here and mount it, and then one on the other side here. So it'll be piece coming off here, piece coming off here. That'll give us mounting here, probably put a mount here, and then we'll have a piece come up this way. We can put a mount here, and then same thing down this way. Okay, I got two of my mount pieces made up. This is the side that's going to follow the staircase down. So put those in place. Put a straight edge across here. Get everything lined up. Anyway, I'll get it all lined up and we'll weld those pieces on. Then we'll make two for that side. Okay, here's the hinge bracket. Almost done. Works nice. I'll take it off and show you what we do next with it. I was looking at this thing. Even though this piece and this piece were the exact same lengths, because it's at this angle, and because I did something with this corner to sort of round it off a little bit, it looks out of whack. So I'm just going to cut a little bit more off that and then round that over, and then I think it'll look okay. So we'll do that now. What I'm doing now is cleaning up some of these corners. I've, of course, already painted this gate, but I knew I was going to have to do some touch-up work on it and stuff, but also noticed that some of the corner welds and even under here, I left some pretty, I don't know if the camera will pick them up, but there were some pretty deep scratches and gouges in some of these corners. I didn't do a good enough job of cleaning those up, so before I go any further, I'm just going to clean those up real quick. Okay, time to put this is the latch system I'm going with. We're going to mount this on the gate now. There's a post that this will mount to, a wooden post, and the gate will come up right next to the post. So we'll weld this onto the gate now in that corner right there, and it'll end up closing against that, like that. So real quick update. Welded this on, and what I did, rather than trying to make everything perfect, is I used a little bit of glazing putty around these welds to make it look nice, and then sanded it smooth. And I also did the same thing here. Now I actually used Bondo, a little bit of Bondo, and some glazing putty, just to cover up these welds a little bit, make them a little nicer looking. I didn't want to introduce any more heat into this because heat will make these pins move just a little bit and then things won't line up. So I used a little Bondo just to cover up these welds. They're plenty strong. And I could have welded them up and kept grinding, but this was actually quicker. So I used a little Bondo, covered those up. Glazing putty over these welds after I cleaned them up. And all I did was I just took some sandpaper, made it into a roll, and just did that to smooth them out. And then once it's painted, it'll look good. So here's the area that the bracket's got to go on. And you can see hopefully what that will look like. Okay, there's the mount all mounted up. See how it follows the contour of the stairs. Now I just got to slide the gate onto the pins. All right, I just slid the gate onto the hinges. Installed the latch here. We got a little clip so the kids can't easily open it. And it came out really good, so I'm pretty darn happy with it. I put a couple of eye hooks here to swing the gate open and use that bungee to keep it open. So it all worked out really well. It's got good fit, looks nice and square. This is concrete, so I had to anchor those in. Anyway, that's it. So thanks for watching, and until the next project, take care.